Hey guys, Ricky Widmer here from Most Valuable Podcast. You're about to listen to a little bit of our primetime podcast that we recorded this week. Make sure to go to BlogTalkRadio / Most Valuable Podcast for our full-length podcast that you can go ahead and download. I hope you enjoy it. I know me and Brandon did recording it. Well, let's move on to our next topic, Brandon, and we're going to move from the Big East to the Big 12, and we're going to look at the West Virginia Mountaineers. They lose a heartbreaker. I'm going to say a heartbreaker because no one expected them to lose this game. The Oklahoma Sooners, not the same Sooner team that they were a year ago. 8-9 and 2-4 now in the Big 12 after winning by 2 in overtime against West Virginia, the number 7th team in the country. And basically, I'm just going to ask you the question that is this segment on YouTube is, can the Mountaineers, like, going from this loss, can they still make a deep run in the tournament, or is that me overreacting?
No, they can't. And I'll tell you why.
Okay.
I'll tell you why is because
I thought you were going to make an overreaction joke with saying that. I thought you were going to, no, they can't. And that's my overreaction.
No, I'm being completely serious.
Okay.
I don't think they can. I mean,
Tell me why.
I will be honest. So rip me to shreds. Rip me to shreds now, okay? I'll be honest. I have not seen a full game, but I have seen the pieces. I have been able to look at some of the highlights, been able to see some of the biggest pieces of the game.
Plus, a Bob Huggins team doesn't change drastically year to year. It's the same concept.
Oh gosh, no. So go ahead and rip me down below, but let's be honest. You've lost 3 games already this season. You've lost certainly 2 games you should not have in Texas Tech and in Oklahoma. And this is just what I think. I don't think that you are really blowing anyone away. That's my whole thing is you've lost to Texas Tech, you've lost to Oklahoma. Those teams were not ranked. You were ranked. You were ranked high within the top 10. You haven't even played Kansas yet. You did beat Baylor, but Baylor, they were number 1 at the time. Baylor's not a number 1 team. You did beat them, though. You did beat them. You haven't played Kansas yet. You haven't played Iowa State yet. You play them twice. You play Kansas twice. You play Oklahoma again at their place. You lost at home.
They're going to get Baylor again at Baylor.
And yes, I was getting down to that. Thank you. But they've got Baylor on the road. They've got Texas.
Kansas State could be a tough team. A Bruce Weber
You only
team.
beat Texas by two the time before at their place. This is not the West Virginia team that I am saying is going to make a big run in the tournament. Last year's team, I would have said, okay, maybe. This year's team, I'm going based off of 2 bad losses. But they're bad losses. Well, there's no getting around it.
The thing that I look at when I look at these, I'm going to look at the 2 bad losses that you said you're looking at. The thing that I pull out from each of them, and it's the one thing that I kind of disagree with when I was kind of looking through different articles, and there were some people that are saying, well, the one thing that West Virginia doesn't need to do in order to win is they don't need to force a lot of turnovers. It's right here in the ESPN article. It says, and I quote, in theory, West Virginia doesn't need to force turnovers, but and then he goes on into it. I'm going to say this. They need to force turnovers if they want to win. Look at the Oklahoma game. How many turnovers did they force? They forced 12 turnovers. Look at the Texas Tech game. I want to say it was, 13 turnovers? And then you look at the Temple game, and they also had, that was 19. So they got up there a little bit. Yeah, it was 13 for Texas Tech. In the Baylor win, how many turnovers did they force in that game? 29 turnovers. That is what you need from a West Virginia team. And I don't want it to seem like I'm ragging on West Virginia, but to me, if that's what you do and you play good defense and you use your press and your trap to force turnovers, why go away from it? Why? And the one thing that, I kind of think about in my head, it's not one of those things where you go, well, this is for sure, because you don't know what's going through those players' heads, but part of me goes, is it something where the intensity level was so high for that Baylor game, you were able to come out and play effective defense with the adrenaline going and the kind of your blood's pumping because you're playing the number one team in the nation at home, but then against Oklahoma and Texas Tech, it's just another Big 12 game, so I don't have to step up like I would for that number one opponent. That is something I think about in my head. It's not something that I go, well, that's for sure what played a factor, because like I said, I don't know what's going on in the West Virginia players' heads themselves, but I think that maybe that played into it a little bit. But the one thing West Virginia needs to do if they want to make a tournament run, they got to play their strong defense. If they can force, I mean, no one's going to go out there and force 30 turnovers a game, Brandon. But if they can come close to that, if they can get 20 plus turnovers a night, they'll win and they'll make a deep tournament run because of their defense. But that's what they got to live on.
I'll tell you what, is that this West Virginia team can be very exciting. They can be very exciting, and we've seen excitement from them in the past. And, I saw excitement from them, even last year. But I think that when you take a look at this team, they're 6th in overall points. 89 points. 63 points per game that they're giving up. Mm-hmm. That's 30th. 38 rebounds a game. That's 106th. They also need to rebound a little bit better, I think. I think that when you pair rebounding with forcing turnovers, I think those things are some things that you kind of put into one of those buckets where you look at those things kind of in the same. You got to get rebounds, you got to force turnovers. And I think for them, that's one thing that they have to be able to do, but they also have to be able to close out for these games that they should win. Mm-hmm. You cannot go and beat Baylor and look so good and then come back
and
again,
lose at Texas Tech.
Not at this point in the season.
Or lose at home against Oklahoma.
This isn't one of your early games. This is your conference schedule. You can't do that. That is how I look at it. Now, some people would say, Brandon, yes, it's better for them to lose now than lose later. I would not disagree, but I would say that but if you're losing to a team, lose to a team that's going to make you look somewhat good when it gets to the time of, we're looking at resumes. Here are the bad losses. You want your losses to be, okay, we lost a tough one to Duke. Or, well, in their case, we lost a tough one to Kansas. It was a barn burner with Baylor in that game.
But we beat them. We beat Baylor. We blew them out. Look at this.
But see, that's the thing is, instead, it's going to be, we lost to Texas Tech. They're still not ranked. We lost to Oklahoma.
Not as good as they were last year.
They're not ranked. They don't have, Buddy Hield. They do not.
The Wooden Award winner.
They do not have the man, the myth, the legend.
Put some respect on that name, Brandon. The Wooden Award winner.
Respect, yes. How do you RESPEC?
No, it's a K. KT.
Ah,
yeah, it's a K.
Okay.
Respect.
So that's what I'm looking at. That's what I'm looking at right now because I'm looking later on. I mean, because we're there. I mean, we're 13 games away from
tournament
the
time.
Regular season being kaput.
Yeah,
and you have to take a look at where you're going to be in 13 or so games and look, okay, were these losses good? Were these losses bad? No losses were necessarily good, but there's a better loss than some. And that's what I'm trying to get to, is the point that West Virginia, if you are going to lose a game, it cannot be to those teams. You cannot lose a game to them. You cannot lose to TCU. You can't do it. You just can't. It's not going to do you any favors. And what I feel like that is what has happened to West Virginia in the past. They have had this great surge and then nothing. And then nothing.
Well, and the thing that I think of is, and the one thing I do want to say, 15-3 right now, is West Virginia team where it's like, hold the phones. They're going to be, if they keep playing like this, they're going to be in question for making the tournament. No. This is a team that most likely, no matter what happens, however it plays out, unless they lose every game, they're most likely going to make the tournament because they are a good team. The thing that I think about, though, is I flash forward to tournament time. When you are in the tournament, and I'm going to fall back on this defense thing that I've been talking about, if they can play strong defense, because to me, in the tournament, there's one thing that rules all, is shooting. If you have the hot hand that day, you're going to win that game. How many times in the tournament have we seen teams just go off, not even teams, sometimes players. Look at what Steph Curry was able to do for Davidson in the tournament because he had a few hot games. Look at Jimmer Fredette. And we've had like shooting performances before. Northern Iowa having key shots. I mean, look at R.J. Hunter last year with his big shot over Baylor. Shooting is important in the tournament. Whoever shoots better will more than likely win that game. But the thing that West Virginia can do is if they can play tough defense, that could knock down your opponent's shot percentage, because if you're not getting turnovers, you can force them into ill-advised shots. Also, what it can do is maybe it's a game where you come out and you're not shooting well coming out of the gates. The emotions are getting to you. Well, if you're playing pressureful defense, you're forcing some turnovers, maybe you can use that to overcome a poor shooting day, poor shooting night in a tournament to maybe flip the script to get some offense going for your team. So for me, that's what I think about. If you have too many of these games now, or even after seeing two of these games now, I look at it and go, can this team string together when the chips are on the line? Let's put it this way. First, second, 16, 8, 4. Can they string together 6 straight wins? At this point, I would say no. However, the good thing about where we are in the schedule, there's enough time to prove me wrong. But right now, based on what I saw against Oklahoma, I don't think this team can go up against tournament quality teams, even upset teams, like teams where it's like, oh, you should beat the number 12 team, but they're going to come in there and upset you. I don't think that West Virginia can win 6 straight tournament games at this point in the season. Good thing is, they got a whole rest of the season to go. We've got about, a good 2 months before we talk about the actual tournament.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I think that one thing for looking back on West Virginia is that they typically haven't always been that strong within their conference. In 14-15, they were 11-7 within their conference, ended up 25-10 overall on the season. Kansas, who ended up winning the Big 12, 13-5, was their ending record in the conference, 27-9 overall. And then West Virginia actually ended up going on a pretty nice run. They got to the Sweet 16, lost to Kentucky 78-39, but they beat Buffalo, they beat Maryland to get there. So they were into the tournament, but what I'm saying is that they're not getting there this year if they lose to teams like they lost to.
That was last year,
14-15 season.
Okay. But because I'm looking at the furthest that they've ever gone in the tournament was the 2010 tournament. And that's when they went all the way to the Final Four before losing to Duke. And I believe that was the year that Duke played Butler in the national championship in Indianapolis. They go ahead and beat Washington, or they beat Washington in the Sweet 16. They beat Kentucky in the Elite 8. They then lose to Duke. They do make that run, but it's like ever since, it's like, okay, you're 1-1 in the 2011 tournament. You lose to Gonzaga in the first round in the 2012 tournament. 13-14, you're absent. And then last year, like you said, you win the first and second round games, and then you lose to Kentucky. And that's the thing for me. When I say, can they win 6 straight games in the tournament, it's not necessarily, can they beat the teams that they're most likely going to play in the first and second round? No, it's more so the teams that they're going to play in the Sweet 16 or the Elite 8, or God forbid the Final Four if they go there. But I mean, talking Final Four right now for a team that I don't think can string 6 games together is a little bit too much right now. That's where I get it. If they have to play a Kentucky, a Kansas, a Duke, maybe not Duke because Duke's kind of declining, but like a Louisville, a top opponent, a Villanova, a team that is going to be a hard opponent in that Sweet 16, that regional semifinal, can they get it done? That's going to be the true test for them.
Yeah, you just can't with this team. You just can't have the letdowns. You just can't have the big letdowns like that. All the the great hype around beating Baylor, the number 1 team in the nation at that time. People were saying, Bob Huggins, is this coach of the year right here? And then you go and you lose to Texas Tech and you lose to Oklahoma. Both teams, again, they're not ranked. I mean, if we're talking Oklahoma last year, it's not such a bad loss. You know, it's one of that's one of those better losses I was talking about. But you just can't. You can't do that. You can't have the highs and the lows like that. I mean, I understand that it's a basketball season. There's going to be things like that, but there's losses that are acceptable. There's losses that are unacceptable. I look at both of those as unacceptable losses.
The one guy I do want to point out for West Virginia that needs to go on a little bit of a run offensively, because right now he's only averaging almost 12 points a game. He's at 11.8 right now. But Javion Carter, if I can get the name out.
Javon
Carter. Thank you, Brandon. I'm bad with names. Carter, basically. He's got to be the guy. He had 23 points against Oklahoma in that loss. He's got to be a guy where at the end of the season, I don't want to see him tied with somebody else on this team at like 11.8 and 11.7 at the top of this team. I want to see him kind of assert himself as, I'm the leading scorer on this team. And I think if he can do that, that's one thing that I think also is that Carter is also an underrated player on this team. No one takes West Virginia. I want to say that no one takes them seriously. That's what I want to do. When it comes to the national spotlight, nobody takes them seriously, but I'm saying they should be, because this team, I want to point that Baylor game out. I want to be like West Virginia, like we were kind of mocking, like, oh, look at our big win here, look at them here. But they played that game, like that's the game where if I'm Bob Huggins, I go back to it and I go, that's our perfect game. That's our perfect game. We did everything right in that one. Good defense led to offense. We blew out the number 1 team in the country. Let's strive to be that every night. And if Carter can be the leader of this team and assert himself offensively and get that points per game up a little more, then I might change my opinion in 2 months when we get to the tournament if West Virginia can win 6 games in a row.
One thing that I'm looking at here for West Virginia, they've got 4 guys averaging 10 points or more per game, which is good. You'd like to see a 5th guy maybe slip in there, but 4 guys is really good. But the thing I'm looking at,
Myers and Phillip at 8. I mean, they're almost together. That one guy.
The thing that I'm looking at here though is the rebounds per game. Nathan Adrian, 6.5 rebounds per game. The next best, Issa Ahmad at 4.6. Then after that, it kind of drops off. Watkins is 4.4. But after that, there's really nothing else. You have got to get better on rebounding per game. You've got to get more guys up there. Where Adrian is right now, I don't think that is bad at all. I think that more guys have to join him there, because the more rebounds that you get, the more opportunities you have for your scoring. And I think that right now it's just a score here, a score there, and you look at those 2 games, and it's a win for West Virginia, not a loss.
Well, and I look at the Oklahoma loss, and of course it's not the game where you're like, oh, I'm going to find a stat to fight my point. They did win the rebounding margin for every single stat. Total rebounds, they were +3. Defensive rebounds, actually, they were -1, so they did lose that one. And then they were +4 for the offensive rebounding department. The one thing I do look at is Carter had 11 rebounds, and really besides that, it was Watkins, Arians, and Phillip who came to the party to help. Ahmad, he only had 2 rebounds that entire game. That cannot happen if this West Virginia team wants to win, but also I think that they need to put a little bit more ownership on their defense and let that set up their offense. But Brandon, before I do what I always do when I ask the listeners and the viewers to join the conversation, any last thoughts? Anything that we missed in this conversation about West Virginia?
Oh, I don't think so.
Okay.
I think we hit them all pretty well.
This is where you guys come in. Let us know down below. Join the conversation in the comment section. If you're listening on Blog Talk Radio, join us on Twitter at Most Valuable Pod. Let us know what you think about West Virginia. What do they need to do? What do you think of the 2 losses they have so far? What do you think of them moving forward this season?
Well, thank you guys for checking out this video from the Primetime Podcast. If you want to check out more, click right over here. The video's right over here. Check it out. Check it out.